Alrighty, what a group.
That's right. And we are at noon.
Okay.
So we can get this underway. Welcome everybody, and of course people can still continue to file in, but welcome everybody to our inaugural Lunch with Limerick, our Center of the American West virtual series. This is the very first one. It's a conversation with Gus Hallas on Rescuing a Nation, Advice from a Turnaround Artist. I'm Kurt Guyar, I'm the Managing Director at the Center of the American West and your host and moderator. Just want to give you a heads up. We have some upcoming events coming as part of this series. Next Friday, September 25th at noon, we will have Jim Ogsberry, the Western Governors Association. The talk title for that is Bipartisanship Happens, How Western Governors Set an Example for the Nation's Leaders. And then the following week, we actually have two, one on a Thursday with Boston College historian Knevery Valencius, Getting Sick and Getting Well, How Americans Have Understood Disease and Health. October 2nd, we have a fascinating conversation. That's actually an hour and a half long. The other ones are shorter, but that conversation with former Oregon Secretary of State Phil Kiesling and CU Denver historian Cameron Blevins. It's on the post office's central role in American life, an advocate for 21st century voting by mail, and a historian of the 19th century U.S. Post Office Get Acquainted. And then on October 6th and November 13th, we will have two events on immigration, the Party of Practicality and Innovative and Pragmatic Conversation about Immigration. They will feature historians Mary Mendoza and Thomas Jimenez and Colorado's Congressman Joe Neguse, for the first one at least, for the October 6th. We're still trying to nail down the November 13th one. Just want to give you all a heads up. We are recording this event, so you will be able to go to our webpage and be able to access it. There is a Q&A feature for those of you who are new to this arena. As you see it down on the bottom of your screen. We will collect questions over the course of the conversation. We may get to a few of them at the end, but if we don't, we will find a way to get some answers to those questions. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to Patty Limerick.
Howdy. Thanks so much for being here. I have become a totally Zoom adapted human being, which didn't seem like it would be in my future, but I'm really happy in seeing the attendees here. That's, I prefer to see you in person, but that'll happen sometime in the future. So I want to explain how this occasion came into being. I met Gus Hallas at an amazing event in Vail in 2014, hosted by our friends Dick and Donna Strong. And his stories stayed in my mind. And as some of you and the attendees know, you were in peril at that point. If I hear you tell stories that I find very interesting, that's probably the last moment of peace you'll have. I'll be after you at some point there to ask you to do something that I think would benefit humanity, which I believe today is certainly in that arena. His story stayed in my mind. I thought of him in late April. I talked to him on April 24th, an email out of nowhere, and he was very kind, very responsive, and we had a very fine conversation on the phone, which I might quote a little bit from time to time. And I asked him if he would join us in this series because, well, I'll explain in a moment, he seemed essential to our thinking about what is going on with our nation today. Not because he is a political scientist or a former elected official, maybe precisely because he is neither of those things. So I'll get to that in just a second. But if you place any confidence in polls today, the majority of Americans in September of 2020 think that the nation is headed in the wrong direction. And they probably think that for several million different reasons. But that is a point of agreement, wrong direction, though again, many different interpretations of what that might mean. If we were lucky, that significant majority of Americans will turn out to be wrong. But in the meantime, it would be great to have a conversation with a person who has devoted his career to taking on troubled organizations and in getting them on better footing. Our guest today is a problem solver. He is not a problem enhancer. The supply of problem enhancers is quite abundant, and we haven't asked them to be our special guest today because you can find those in many other places, but we are really, really fortunate to have him. The Urban Dictionary's definition of turnaround artist: someone who takes an organization, event, or something large that is broken and repairs it and makes it work again, and in many cases profitable and beyond successful. A question we'll get to in a bit. We won't start with this, but can a president of the United States be a turnaround artist? You just heard the definition that something will be weighing. The sequence of topics that we'll discuss today, first I'm going to ask our guest Gus Hallas to talk about his adventures as a turnaround artist and rescuing companies. He has become a master practitioner of problem solving. Then we will talk second about how he feels about, cares about, and values the United States, given that he, especially from his experience as an immigrant from a very troubled country from Greece as a child, came as a child. And then third, we'll talk about what he thinks our nation needs in leadership to address our current problems. And then we'll take the last few minutes to find out where he finds his inspiration and found it in the past and where he continues to find it. And we'll have him share that with us as the last unit of guidance. So viewers, you are to be thinking about how a troubled country is similar to a troubled company, but also thinking about how a troubled country is different from a troubled country. And you are to keep track of your thoughts and share them with us. So ready, audience? Start your engines, which is actually a clever remark that you don't know how clever that is until another few seconds have passed. So I'm not doing much of a bio here. My guest here, Gus Hallas, has been the chairman of the board and a board member and a president and partner and consultant in many business enterprises. And rather than list those, we're going to have those come up as we go through some of his stories. He has the bachelor's degree in physics and economics, and he has also a master's degree in business. So more of that. He's in Charlotte right now, and he doesn't really want to be in Charlotte. He wants to be at his place on Bald Head Island offshore, which is not easy to get to, and he will be there soon, but there's a lot of rain right there now. So what an interesting name, Bald Head Island. That's something that we don't. We probably have Bald Head Mountain somewhere in the state that I haven't had the chance to visit. So he is a modest and unassuming man. And so to get us started on a topic on which he cannot be restrained or understated, I am going to ask him why he likes working on cars and motorcycles. And that will give us the chance to make the transition to stories of his, I can make a transition by asking him if he has had moments of wishing that he had stuck with his original ambition of becoming a mechanic, or if in fact he just sort of metaphorically ended up doing that, fixing broken machines. I guess we'll call them that. That's not quite what a company is. So if I were asked to go help fix a car or motorcycle, I would have so many other things I needed to do before I would be available to do that. That would not be my idea of a good time. So you're speaking to somebody who has no glimpse of why you would enjoy that. So tell us why that is so enjoyable.
Well, from the beginning, I loved speed, and I fixed motorcycles in order to go faster, in order to look great when it was parked, and the same thing about cars. And because of my background, which you know well, I came to the US when I was 11 years old, and my parents had third grade education. So college was not in my future, even though school was and continued to be very easy. So in my mind, I was going to build cars, build motorcycles, things that go fast in the world, until my uncle, who I'm forever grateful, said, no, that's not what you're going to do. You're going to go to college. So that's when I went off and I said, okay, I guess I'll major in something. Well, he had not gone to college either. He just knew that was very valuable. So I majored in the things that I was passionate about, and physics and economics were two of them. Of course, with an undergraduate degree in that, it means very little. And it was much later when I got my MBA, but that fixing still goes on. I have 3 very exotic, very, very fast cars, 2 motorcycles that are the same way. So that has not gone out of my system. But, I went off on another trip that I fixed companies, and it became a passion. I didn't want to stay there beyond the point of just fixing them. And then I moved on to another one instead of enjoying the laurels, if you will. Having fixed it, it was time to move on to another troubled situation, which under normal circumstances, you've got to say that's a little crazy. But It fed my ADHD needs to have lots and lots of things going on all at once. And I also felt great when I achieved something. And when it happened, I didn't look for compliments, but people would say just thank you. And that meant the world to me, because I had changed lives along the way in very positive and very negative ways because of what I had to do in order to turn the company properly. But instead of the whole company falling apart, it would be only a certain portion of it. So that's how I got to that point. And I'm still doing the same thing. Next year I'll be 70 years old, and I still love getting involved, and my phone rings off the hook because people think I can help them. And if they think so, I will call them.
Right. That's a wonderful answer. And a wonderful thing has occurred. We are exactly the same vintage. I've all turned 70 years old. I had no idea. And now we're not going to go anywhere into competition or rivalry, nothing like that. But you need to know that my car is probably faster than your cars because I have a Tesla. So if we were to just, those first 6 seconds, you would be so left behind. It would be really sad to see.
What? It's the first 3. But that's okay. It's actually the first 2.3 seconds than some of my cars.
Oh, is that right? Well, I never want to test this proposition, but I thought you should know that when it comes to the fast car, that you're in good company.
I know
So, okay.
all about them. They're wonderful, wonderful vehicles.
Oh, thank you, thank you. They are. They're. Speaking of companies, that's an odd company. We'll just say that. And some other day we'll return to that whole question about who I'm supporting by having that car. Absolutely. So, okay, so now we're going straight in for stories about life as a turnaround artist. And so I'm going to start us off with an odd question, which is basically, tell us about a time when you were asked to help a troubled company, and in the first encounters, it didn't seem to be troubled. Did you ever have such an occasion where it took a while before the troubles came to the surface, or were they always, if it turns out that the answer to this question is they're never concealed, you can see the trouble right from the start? But I just wondered if there was ever an occasion where you thought, I wonder why they asked me, and then discovered.
It's never why did they ask me, it's the depth of the problems. And they're masked sometimes in different things. The stock price can be very low, and I can tell you of one, and this is anecdotally, you'll enjoy it. The largest shareholders asked me to come on to this one company, and I knew it was troubled. And then I did not know how bad it was because this troubled shareholder had owned so much of the company. So I said, you didn't tell me how bad things were. And this is somebody that was a friend and is still a friend, and said, Gus, we couldn't have gotten you to come if we told you how bad things truly were. So you just saw that the stock was really deflated. There was $6. We took it to, me and the team took it to $82 over a 3.5, 4-year period. And obviously the shareholder, recovered and made a lot of money. And so but I love that comment that, first of all, it answers your question that indeed, you don't know how bad things are. It's bad, but you don't know how bad until you start digging in. And second, people may not want to tell you the whole thing, even in a kind way that he said it. I wanted you here. That's why I was going to just tell you some of it. Yeah. This happened to be in Houston, Texas, by the way.
Huh. Did they have troubles in Houston, Texas? That's, well, who knew that there would be businesses in trouble in Houston, Texas? So that was
oh boy, there's a lot of them now.
Yeah, there's a very
and I'm working pretty hard right now.
Insensitive and weak jokes. So moving on. So tell about the occasion where you encountered the most resistance. As you, there's nothing wilder than trying to help people who are not consenting to be helped. So where did you get the greatest pushback and rejection from people who really needed you?
Yeah, that was in Kansas City. And fundamentally, the company was a cooling tower company, cooling tower all over the world. I had operations in 25 countries. And sometimes in a badly run company, they almost, the management team, the senior management team creates almost a crust. they won't let good ideas percolate through the organization and come to them. Even if they get something, they suppress it because they think they know better, and they create this team environment that just is totally has stopped growing or looking at the different things that are going on. But more importantly, there's a lot of people in the organization that can help them, and yet they resist them because they want to make sure that only their ideas and their approach to the world works. So at that point, you have to sort of immediately cut that and break.
Well, we are having
in the past.
Now you're back. Good.
So
we lost you there just for a minute, but now you're up for 15 seconds, but you're back now.
Yeah. So. And so it creates, what happens at that point is you have to act quickly so the organization sees that things are not going to be the same after that. And unfortunately, that results in folks that you have to let go. And no matter how many times you do it in your life, if you've got any sense or any credibility, it always bothers you because I've had to let go literally thousands of people throughout my career, and it's never something that you get used to. If you get used to it, you're in the wrong world.
Do you? Is there any point in trying to offer a chance for conversion or redemption before someone is taken to the door? And does that ever work?
Absolutely. I have a standard speech, and this is based on statistics. As soon as I walk into a company, I have the first layer and the second layer of management team, and I sit by myself with them, and I just simply say, statistically, folks, and this is, by the way, it's founded on statistics, 20% of you, as soon as I finish telling you what we're going to do, what I'm going to do with this company, how we're going to be moving, we're going to be moving cohesively in one direction, fast, doing all the right things. 20% of you will immediately sign on, and you will say, Gus, we're right with you. We want to be there. We want to be able to help. I said, 50% of you are going to sit on the fence. God bless you. That's great. That's the most wonderful thing I've heard. Sit on that fence and let me prove to you that I'm going to outwork, out hustle, I'd do anything, because I'll be here for 12, 14, 16 hours, and I'm not asking you to do the same, but I'm going to be committed to turning this company around and fixing it. And I said, 30% of you, frankly, and it's a little more colorful than how I'm going to say it, but basically couldn't care less if I lived or died. And that's fine. Come to me after the meeting. I promise you I will exit you in a very humane and positive way. But I said, but we're not going to be together because we have to move. We've got a responsibility to the rest of the organization, the thousands of people that are not in this room and their families and everybody else. So that's our first responsibility. If you're simply are going to block me from that, we won't be together. Come talk to me. I promise you, I will treat you with all the class and all the humanity, but we're not going to be together. Let's be clear. So, and ironically, those numbers skew, but throughout my career, they're pretty well, whoever conducted this to begin with was right on, because it does come across the same way initially, and some of the people on the fence will go one way or another. They'll push back and say, no, we don't want to work that hard. We don't like him, or whatever the issue is. And that, I accept that.
Huh. Have you any experiences of despair, of just thinking, well, we seem to be getting somewhere, but no, we've had momentum and it's gone? Or do you do despair is really the question I'm asking. Do you have wiring for despair?
I do despair, but that literally, if everything's not running perfect and running on all cylinders, I'm in despair. I'm going to be there. It's like fixing that motorcycle and tweaking it in order to make it that much faster and better. I've been fortunate in life with a lot of success in the companies that I've turned, but it doesn't come out as fast as you want. Things don't move as fast. People don't move as fast as you'd like to see them. and or you're not even, maybe there's too many things on your plate and you're missing something else. But fundamentally, oh yeah, absolutely despair, but sometimes it's not founded. It's just my makeup that everything's not perfect today. So that's part of what we all have to do in order to get to the next level.
The phrase that you said, that people coming in who had been in to visit you and who knew how you operated, that the 3 short statements beginning with the word be, that you said people knew that when they came in to see you, that your expectation was, and I want to.
And actually it's this came out from one of my direct reports, who right now, after he and I went through all the different things in one company, he's now running a company and he's asked me to be the chairman of the board, which I am. But it was be quick, be brilliant, be gone. Let's not waste a lot of time and effort on things that are peripheral to what we're trying to do. Our number one goal is to fix this, because we have a responsibility to the shareholders, the stakeholders, the employees, the vendors, everybody around. You know, there's nothing for us to face and look at ourselves as these, wonderful folks. The whole idea is, how do we get this company in order to be the most successful one? So let's not waste a lot of time. Let's figure out what it is. So be quick, be brilliant, be gone. That's our meeting.
Okay, so a quick question here. It seems like wanting things to be perfect and feeling despair when they're not, and telling people be quick, be brilliant, be gone. Would this not get some people's backs up, or are those the people who departed in the 30%? But it seems like some.
Those are definitely the people, because they were used to not being quick. Even though some of them were very smart, they would not project the brilliance, and so they had to be gone. Yes, and I say I don't want to sound callous, because that's important. I'm affecting somebody's life, and that's always something that hangs heavy for anyone that has going on. But I don't have a responsibility just to them. I have a responsibility to a lot more people. So I can't look back and say, yeah, I've changed this whole world, but he changed a lot of other people's world, which is unfortunate, and that's why I'm there. If the whole idea was, I shouldn't be there. I shouldn't be in any of my jobs if people have done their job correctly. They're smart, they're capable, they did a good job, they're obviously well educated, they rose to a certain, but somewhere along the way, they just sort of dropped that point and then just moved on into another phase of what they wanted to do, or just started reading their own press clippings, as they say, started believing that because the economy is good, or the market is good, or the demand is such, it's all about them. And you can't think that way in life, I don't believe.
So I want to review some of the things that you have mentioned to me, and then we'll make the quick visit to the topic of being an immigrant, and then we'll get to applying what you know to our national need for repair. So you've been there, but just maybe a little bit more on how your responsibility is to the whole group, which might even be the people who are going to have to leave. But you cannot be thinking of any particular group that you're going to be catering to or prioritizing. You have to be thinking whole. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Well, it really just comes down for me, that whole scenario is, I have a responsibility to everyone in that facility, in that company, in the world, because some of them were multinational companies. And fundamentally, I can't look at one person that has a personal need that's separate from what our common goal is. And what do I mean by that? Maybe somebody needs to be praised constantly, or dealt deferentially, or anything that can't exist in that environment. We all have to row the boat the same way. If somebody is rowing the boat in a different way, then that won't work, and folks need to move on along that way.
Good. Thank you. You have a wonderful thing you told me about how well, really the topic, the bigger topic here is how you must self-manage in order for all this to work, and the attention you have to pay to your own conduct. And so the stuff that you said about accepting credit and accepting blame, could you recap that?
Well, for me, I always have to stand up and say anything that goes wrong as the leader, I'm to blame. And anything that goes right, I try to find that person, team, group, whichever did it, and praise them, because that's what we all live on. If it's so necessary for the leader to constantly feel that he is being praised, I'm the wrong person and they're the wrong person for whatever they're doing, because they're not looking at who is responsible along the way. I can honestly tell you that regardless of what kind of leader I am, what kind of work I did, how hard I worked, or anything else, if I didn't have all those people that helped me through the years, I would never have met the success that I had. So I can talk to the cows come home about, you know, what I knew, where I came from, what I did, or anything else. But if I couldn't get those folks motivated to move in the direction that I wanted everyone to move in a very quick manner, with alacrity, as they say, without, you know, then I would not have been as successful. So it's kind of silly for me to think that I'm such a good leader that I need all the attention. That doesn't exist in any world, because the only thing you can do is set up an organization, motivate all the people, focus, reward, admonish, whatever it is along the way, whatever it takes in order to succeed. But anyone that takes their own view of the world, that they made all the changes and they did everything else, they don't exist. It doesn't happen that way. You know, so, and the only thing that you can do as a leader, and you know that I have an affinity for people like Patton and, you know, and even Bear Bryant, just because it was the team that did it. It was the team that was successful, but they had to be led. And that's all you provide the direction, the attention, everything else. So and by the way, I don't want to ever send the message that I did everything right. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And then at that point I had to change in mid-course or anywhere else. It's what the ultimate result was. And were we successful as a team? Did we get the company to the level that we wanted, or the organization, whatever? That's where we're going to all be measured. Not, and I don't want it to say anything that would in any way say that, boy, I came in and the waters parted. Quite the opposite. I made many mistakes through the years, because we all do. And if we take it any other way, we're in trouble.
Okay, just one or two quick things. And then on this, we talked about this whole part of your mission earlier between us we talked about the creation of a change story, of a narrative that is not pages and pages long, and quite the opposite, but how this whole enterprise rests on a story that people grasp and respond to. So could you say a few words about that?
Sorry, the
change story of what is it we're doing? What are we doing with this? We were in trouble, and what is the story on how we are going to exit from that trouble?
Right. Yeah. We have to identify it. It really just comes down to we have to identify what the problems are. And the very thing that I say to everyone is, no one is calling me because everything is going well. So we're having certain problems. We have to identify the problems, and then we have to prioritize. And if I think you were talking about the government and how do we change that? Well, you can't boil the ocean. You have to look at what are the key issues. You're going to focus on other things later on in life, and later on if you're in that particular assignment. But if you're going in, and let's just take one example. If you have so much debt that it's about to crush the company, well, you have to figure out quickly that's the number one goal, because you can't do item B and C and D if your debt is 10 times your earnings. So you have to say, okay, what do I do? And you have to find a goal in order to be able to get that done. And then if it's marketing, whatever it is, that you have to identify it and act on it and move in the right direction. You develop a goal, but you have a very short window that you have to react to all these different problems that has brought you to this level, and you have to act quickly in order to get that done.
Okay, so creating trust or restoring trust is a theme. I think we're going to hold that out to when we get to the nation, but I don't know if there is any more common refrain these days in the United States, but we have lost trust. A little bit of a question of when we ever had trust, but how do you take an organization, as you have with all of these, where trust just has to be totally on the ropes, just tattered and...
These are not mine, but I've lived by them for all the companies and everything that I do. Honesty. You cannot on any level not be honest. I don't care if it's your wife or your business partner or anything else. You have to be honest. Clear goals. You have to identify what the problem is, create your goals. You have to respect people along the way. You have to have confidence that you're going to get them done, because that's what you have to project to the organization. Passion, humility, and you really have to be able to persuade people that, you know, these are our goals. These are the things we need to do in order to be successful. For me, that's the definition, and you can find certain nuances everywhere else. But whenever I started looking at what leadership is all about, and I started reading different things, these are the things that seem to be the common goal and that people trust. Plus, you know, at one point I was an employee, so if I felt I could trust the person in front of me, if I was clear on what my goals were, you know, if I had the clarity and if they gave me enough confidence in terms of what I was doing, then I'm ready to go to the next level. So you have to parlay that into the rest of the organization. But the number one thing, if you notice, is honesty. Yeah. They have to know that you're not going to say one thing and do something else. You have to be almost like you've got guardrails and you're on Formula One racetrack. You can't be anywhere else.
Somehow I knew we would get a car metaphor back in here. It's been long enough. Okay, so now we're shifting to a unfortunately way too short story of your childhood and its transformation by immigration.
Yeah, after World War II, Greece went into a civil war. And so my father went from being a soldier, fighting the Italians and the Germans, to fighting the folks, his countrymen that were communists, and they were trying to take over the country. And when they lost, the communists lost, they developed a scorched earth policy, which they basically salted fields and created a lot of problems along the way. So when I was born, which was 1951, literally people were starving on the street. My father left when I was 9 months old, came to the US, and I saw him 3 times until I was 11 years old. And then finally my mom put her foot down and she said, we're going to be poor wherever we are. We're going to either be in the States with you or you're going to stay here. And they decided to come to the States. And they, at that point, I had taken algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and calculus by the 5th grade. And when I came here, because I didn't speak the language, they put me in a remedial class. And so back to doing 2 and 2 plus 4, et cetera. So it was a little rocky along the way. And with my ADHD, I just sort of started, you know, not being a behavior problem. And, but slowly, and I had no guidance along the way. So because my parents, as I said, were they had third grade education, so they couldn't give me a guidance in terms of school. But I was fortunate on a number of occasions that I was able to sort of navigate my way through. And the friends that I had then, I still have them. My best friend when I was 12, when I came to Charlotte, he and my son and his son, we went on a motorcycle ride because that's what he and I used to do. So I have a very strong sense of loyalty to people that I've known, because the few friends that I had, even though I have countless of acquaintances and people that I really care about and very wonderful people, the true friends are few and far in between because of what I've done all my life, and also just basically who was there when I needed them the most. So we came here, we were very poor, but I didn't know that. I just thought that everybody was poor. And school was easy, but boring because it was not going fast enough. I learned the language quickly. And I was fortunate enough, I would not, by the way, one thing I didn't add, I would graduate in physics and economics, but I was fortunate enough, I had academic scholarships. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And indeed, I would have done what my other passion was, which was fast vehicles. So I don't want to bore people with all of that. But
remarkable, and I wish we had more time. But really what I want now, just very quickly, is how you feel about the United States, given the role that the United States played in the transformation of your circumstances.
Well, I'm right now, it's very difficult for me. I think we talked a little bit before that. I'm conservative and I'm Republican, but there's a man there. Just I don't believe in arguing about politics or anything else. It's just that's what I believed in, that because that's how I grew up. But right now, the party that I supported through the years is really taking down the most wonderful country in the world from my perspective, because it gave not only my family an opportunity, but it's given me great opportunities, including my children. And so I would love to say that things are good, but things are not good. And there's so much dissonance in the world. I have a daughter that's at Wake Forest majoring in statistical math and computer science, and she's going to be going to Deloitte too. She graduates. She already has a job. I didn't have a job until much later, but she's brilliant. And so I sort of see her and I said, what kind of future are we having? Because the turnaround that needs to occur now is going to take a lot longer for us because of the carnage, if you will, that's happened in the past, one thing, and the carnage that's occurring now. And God forbid if the carnage that goes through, if another term comes to play. These are not, for me, that's not a political statement. It's just the reality, and it's me looking at it from what would I do, and what am I looking at in terms of things going wrong. And you asked me something some time back, if I had an opportunity to do something for 6 months, what would it be like? And I would go, well, first of all, I need a lot more than 6 months, because we have done, in some cases, irreparable damage to a wonderful country.
Okay, we have made our transition to the topic of the nation. I'm going to make an overgeneralization, maybe, and you will then correct it. Nearly everything, let's skip the nearly part because it's an overgeneralization. Everything you said about what works in leadership in helping a troubled group turn things around, nearly everything you said is absent from the White House.
True.
You were supposed to correct my overgeneralization. No, nope.
It's not an overgeneralization. Unfortunately, it's not an overgeneralization. And when you, if you think about it, the you know, the fact of the matter is, we're not coming together as a country, as a family, as you know, however you want to look at it. We're doing the exact thing that usually I get called in, because there's a minority that in essence is running the entity and usually running it into the ground. And that's what we're doing right now. This is not that much different from what we've encountered in when we go in to run companies. There's a small minority that, however, have taken over and have really almost run the company in the ground, where they would come in and say, okay, guys, fix it. And this is what's going on right now. The majority of the people in our country are not in agreement, but yet, for whatever reason, and we can go into those details, but it's not necessary, a minority is creating this dissonance that could that's not only damaging now, but is going to be damaging for years to come.
I had written the question, which I'll just ask it. You have, right now, you have the role that I guess all of us often feel that I have, of spectator and bystander. And I have had at least 4 experiences in life where I watched a car accident happen, and had to, couldn't do anything but watch it happen. And I don't like those memories of that. And I tried to move and be helpful as soon as the collision ended. I tried to be helpful. So, but watching it happen and being a spectator and a bystander is, that's a rough experience. Although I guess for me to say that about myself, that's self-indulgent, because so I'm having a rough experience. Well, so what, but since you have such a record of taking on troubled situations and bringing them into some state of recovery and redemption, do you have episodes where you find yourself almost desperate to intervene, or have you just recognized the limits that you face?
I recognize the limits. There's not much. It's kind of interesting for me that I have had discussions with people that I considered very, very bright, very articulate, successful in some ways, but yet at the same time can support this situation we're in right now. That's probably, for me, that's a bigger problem, and a much more difficult for me to understand. I don't discuss politics with anyone, because there is no point where we're going to find a new common ground if we're entrenched as we are right now. So I have a tendency to listen a lot more, and I have a very successful friend, and you know, we see each other fairly often, and I hear him talking about, you know, what's going on, and he sees it with a very, very positive approach. And I guess I want to ask, where do you see this? But you get into a discussion that's nonsensical, because you're never going to reach a conclusion if you're talking politics on any level if you have a disagreement. And there is no common ground, Frank.
So I did pepper you with several questions, though, about what you would do. I don't want to ask, I was going to ask if you see light at the end of that tunnel, if you see some occasion of being less entrenched so that we might find common ground. I won't push on that just yet, because come back to the inspiration part if you want to do that. But I wonder if you want to take that question that, so here's the question, I'll share it with the audience here. Let's imagine that an extraordinary moment of wisdom and consensus came over the Senate and the House and the Supreme Court and the military and the governors. And they all said, we are in a very grim time and we need to recruit that guy who has saved a bunch of companies. For 6 months, we'll just give him complete authority. And you've said you want that 6 months doesn't seem sufficient, so you can negotiate the time period. So what would you do at this moment of, come help us?
Well, you can't boil the ocean, and that's just what that's a very common ground that I always have. There can be so many things wrong, but if you frankly look at the COVID situation as it's going through right now, the economy overall, that I see so many changes, and I don't want to bring everybody down, but this is going to be a very difficult time for us to recover economically, especially if this truly goes as the experts see it until middle of next year, if not later. Our whole economy is going to look completely different in structure, in the opportunities, in the way that we do things, the way we shop. Literally, so many things are going to change. So the economy and COVID, which sort of go hand in hand, are probably the number one thing. And I would get the absolute best experts in the world, and they're right here with us. And I would say, help me, because I'm not smart enough to understand everything about COVID. Then I get the best economists, and I would say, I'm not smart enough to know about that. Tell me what we're going to do. And I would totally shoot down all the factions, because that's what's so damaging to us right now. That's not boiling the ocean. That's just focusing on our three most important goals. And if we can get enough, if we can take care of that, then we're going to get to the next level. My concern is that we're not focusing on the first two, COVID and the economy, which is so damaging. So it's going to have such a devastating effect. It would, don't like to be negative, but I see a lot of us. And then the factions, we're getting more and more away from one another and finding the common cause, because we seem to be looking at two different directions. So, but that's my approach of the urgency. You gave me 6 months. That's the only thing that I would focus on almost 24 hours a day. I would get the best people and say, let's talk about the options. Let's do the brainstorming. Let's find out what we're going to do. Let's come together as an organization. And any factions along the way that's not focusing on those two items, you have to treat them like the 30% that I was talking about earlier, which ironically is the 30%
that's a good
that we're talking about.
Yeah. So tell me, experts, so I've lived a good share of my life from when, well, actually, it's so wonderful that our time periods are exactly the same. So from 1968, when I was 17, when you were 17, I have been in universities, and I get out pretty often, but I have been in universities. So I have maybe, I have a very different sense of experts, because that's where I have been, is among experts on campus.
Right.
And your experience seems to be much more of saying, this is the experts, these are the experts I need. So more of a focused, well, that's your point, focus, drawing on expertise, where I may have lived from 1968 in kind of a great marketplace of experts all talking at once. So I don't instantly think, yes, let's get the experts together. I think, oh dear me, it's going to be a lot of different forms of appraisal going on around. So talk a little bit about what you would do if you summoned the COVID experts and the economy experts and drew from them and didn't just hear a great chorus of noise, but.
Oh, I'm not looking for the noise. That's the most important part. I'm looking for the solution. And I think based on how I've heard them on the COVID and the economy, I mean, you may get subtle nuances from one or the other group, because that's how it works in business as well. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, directionally, good, smart people will come to pretty much the same conclusion. The others will be shades of the good solution. So if you can get the best economists in the world, they're going to find whatever that common ground is, and somebody will have something subtle. Okay, we move interest rates a fraction of a point and somebody says a little bit more. But at the end of the day, the smart people are going to come together and they're going to find the solution. And that's who I want. I want them to tell me. I always say, talk to me like I'm a 10-year-old and explain to me how I can make it to the next level. Tell me what we need to do. And it's amazing how resourceful people can be. And you don't have to bring the absolute best economists. You can bring some of the folks that are, not the best, but have good ideas, and you'll find them everywhere. But the whole idea is, how do I get there? How do I get them to focus on what I need to do?
I noticed details that probably a sensible person wouldn't bother with, but you got out of Greece when you were 11, and you just said, talk to me like I'm a 10-year-old. So 10-year-old, you're still in a absolutely calamitous country.
Right.
And I'm finding it, I took too many literature classes is our problem right now, because I just think that's interesting that he said 10. So a child, but a child in just an awful situation of chaos and starvation. So, okay. So do you want to have me be more of a literature scholar or less of a literature scholar? I was just kind of struck. If you could say, I don't know that has anything to do with anything, or was there something in that moment of you're saying 10?
I've never thought about it. I just feel like that's, if they can explain it.
Yeah.
I've thought about writing a letter to my 11-year-old alter ego, if you will, about what's going to happen in his life. And at that point, my question is that the point of demarcation, because my whole world changed? And so there's probably something very subtle there that I never thought about before you just asked me.
Well, okay. So, have to recover from being a literature scholar for a moment. So, that I think that notion of asking in that mode of humility, experts guide me, but also being the person who will take all that in and who will take, as you say, you'll take the responsibility. And if you come out of that with a solution, when you pull all that together and you try that and it fails, then you're the one who says, oops, that was me.
It's me.
And if it succeeds, then you pass that around. That just does not seem like the temperament of our elected officials. And many, I think governors, maybe governors. I think governors might be that. But sorry, go ahead. I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting that you say that. I found I've always had this one word. We all put our pants on the same way, so I can't feel like I'm superior to anyone else. It doesn't matter what I've accomplished. It doesn't matter what I've done. The fact of the matter is, we going back to that statement, we put our pants on the same way. There's no reason for us to feel like one is superior to another. The instant that you do that, I think what I have found, because of what I've encountered through the years, is that feeling of superiority is what drove a particular company down. And it was this feeling of, I call it reading their press clippings. If you feel that way, if you feel it's all about you, you're going to fail. There is no other way. You can talk. I've talked to some. I was last year about this time. I was on Necker Island, and I met Sir Richard Branson, and we were talking about what he has accomplished and what direction he was going to take certain of his companies and everything else. And he constantly talked about the people that have helped him through the years in order to accomplish the things that he did. And I said, that's a leader. That's why people have followed him. He's very charismatic, and he's also very, very successful.
Right. Now we are at the concluding item, our fourth item, about where you find inspiration, guidance. If it's from great leaders and people who have succeeded, that's fine. I would open the door, should you want to go through that door, about religion, if that's anything in the picture there. But if it's people who are tried and proven, and what they have said, that's fine too. So, okay, so why don't I take up all the time asking you the question, which will keep us from getting to hear your answers. So that was the question.
I have most of my inspiration are, ironically, military leaders and coaches or people that lead people along the way. And yes, the part, there's some history which I won't take into it, but my lovely daughter was found to be ill before she was born, to the point that the doctor asked us to abort her. And my wife and I said, that's not going to happen. And we went to a monastery that all my family has gone to and asked for help. From that point until I came back, I happened to be in Switzerland, and then I flew down to Greece. From that point until I came back, we went to the doctor that was seeing her and saying that, and he said, just taking the tests, everything has disappeared. Take that for what it's worth. She is a beautiful, stunning girl that's brilliant. And if it was anybody else that said, well, if you feel we have to abort, we'll abort. And both my wife and I said, absolutely not. And so I have it's sort of a dichotomy, because there's religion and there's militaristic approaches to the world. And that's what drives me on both sides.
Right. And
that's an excellent question, by the way. Nobody's asked me that before, so you got the unvarnished answer.
Thank you. There's a little bit of a story behind why I asked that, but we'll chat endlessly, I hope, in the future. So, okay, so a couple of we only have a couple more minutes, but a couple of words, sentences, sayings that you return to in your mind.
Oh, in inspiration?
Yeah.
George Patton says, a good plan violently executed right now is better than a perfect plan next week. That just, that's sort of in essence what I live by. And then another thing that he used to say is, do everything you ask of those who you command. Mm-hmm. Do everything you ask. In other words, don't stand above just because he was a 4-star general. Do it because you have to do the same thing. You can't ask somebody else you're not willing to do. And one of my favorite football players was Bear Bryant, and he had this unlimited spirit, and he pardon the words, but he basically said, mine will beat yourn. That's an Alabama way of saying yours. And he says, I'll take yourn and beat mine. Because it didn't matter. He was going to win, because he had all the wherewithal in order to be able to go out and win in the world.
And yet doing the right thing. I mean, you could win and you could be doing the wrong thing, and then you would have won. So where does that, in the seconds left to us, where does that doing the right thing come into the force of that?
Bear Bryant, you have to do the right things, and you have to believe that you're going to, you're not going to compromise your goals and your direction, when it comes to what you have to do. That's why you push the organization. Alexander the Great always rode up front, when he was going to fight battles. And that's the right thing, because he's putting his life at risk, no different than all the other people that he was going out in the world and doing the same thing.
Well, we have just reached the end. This is our first run on Lunch with Limerick. And one of the things that neither the guests nor I get to do is eat lunch. We hope other people have that chance. But I don't know that we particularly need food after having such a banquet of stories and thoughts and ideas and tested experience and principles. So we almost always, when we had a really, really good speaker and we were all in the same room, we would always do a standing ovation. And well, can't really think how that's going to work, because if we all stood up, then we would, well, some of us would have beautiful Western belt buckles and that would be nice. But okay, so I just would like to ask everybody to take, because I'm the only one who's audible who can shout and clap, I should do that on behalf of everyone. I'm a commissioned agent on the part of our listeners, and this will be posted online. And I do get a little carried away at these moments, and I think this could do it. This could really, this could turn things, turn around. And the word artist, shoot, I was going to ask you how you felt about the word artist, and I don't have any time to do that now, but we have had the extraordinary opportunity to have this artist with us, and I shall whoop for everybody else. Woo! Woo!
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gus. Thank you.